Hey guys, this is Ben with Breaking the 1%. Hey, I wanted to spend a few minutes today talking to you guys a little bit about Pinterest and specifically Pinterest group boards. If you're not on Pinterest and you are a blogger, you are making a huge mistake. Jeff and I here at Breaking the 1%, we get I'd say about 150,000 unique visitors a month from Pinterest, which is pretty amazing considering we run a personal finance and business-oriented website. So if your website is about food or fitness or just about anything else, you're going to get more traffic than we do. But first off, how do you do that? You have to post to good group boards. And so the purpose of this video is to talk about what exactly constitutes a good group board. I posed this question in our blogging group the other day. If you're not a member of our group, you can actually join our group right here. It's on our sidebar. There's a link to the group to kind of talk about blogging, business, and then kind of how to grow your blog. But anywho, we were talking a little bit about what constitutes a good group board. Which group boards should you be posting to? Which ones should you not be posting to? And so I asked for a volunteer, and I got Lois. I got Lois at livenourished.net. It's a faith-based blog, and she has been kind enough to share access to her Tailwind account. So we are going to spend a few minutes today looking at her Tailwind account, kind of looking through her group boards and kind of analyzing which ones she should and should not be posting to. So I'm going to hop over to one more tab here into Tailwind. If you're not familiar with Tailwind, it's essentially a pin scheduler. You can get a free trial, or you can use their paid service. Right now, I'm looking at Lois's account, and she has the paid service. The right side here, under the virality score and the engagement score, those figures will be grayed out if you do not have the paid version. But you can still see the pins and the followers of each of the boards you're on if you have the free version. So definitely sign up for the free version if you don't already have Tailwind. So one thing I wanted to talk about is what constitutes a high quality board and why you should be pinning to them and those only, and getting rid of your crappy group boards. So I've sorted this virality score column. It's actually in descending order here, based on the repin rate. I know that it says virality score, but the easiest way to think of it is a repin rate. And so this top board here that she's on, this clean eating recipes board, it's historically averaging a 6.21 repin rate. And one thing to keep in mind is that repin rates of boards are going to vary based on the niche that you're in. For example, Jeff and I are in the personal finance and business niche, and getting a repin rate of about 1 or higher is doing pretty good. So for each pin that you pin to Pinterest, if you're getting at least 1 repin in return, you're doing pretty good. If you're below 1.0, you may want to consider your pinning strategy or why your pins are not performing the way you want them to. Since Pinterest has moved to a smart feed or algorithm-based sorting mechanism, you want your pins to be appropriate in the eyes of the sorting mechanism. And if your pins are consistently getting good engagement, then you know that the smart feed generator is more likely to pull your content out onto a smart feed. And so that is kind of the whole premise behind posting to only high quality group boards. If you're consistently posting to bad group boards or spam oriented boards, the engagement rate on your pins is going to drop. So you're actually doing yourself more harm than good. So if you see a group board and it's got 50,000 followers and you're super excited to pin to it, and the repin rate of that board is 0.1, you're actually doing yourself more harm than good. So Pinterest has taken a huge focus on quality versus quantity. They want you, doesn't matter if you've got 500 followers now, if your repin rate and your engagement rate on your pins are good, they're going to start showing your pins on the smart feed to other users that aren't even your followers. So just keep that in mind. We're aiming here to get our engagement rates as high as possible. So back to the repin column here. As you can see, her clean eating recipes historical repin rate of that board is 6.21. But just because it's performed historically well does not mean that it's performing good in the here and now. So when I am drafting my own personal repin strategy, I want boards that are going to be doing good right here, right now. I don't care how a board has done historically. I don't care how many followers it has, although that does matter to some extent. I want to know how that board is performing right now. So typically what I do is I'll, again, sort this repin column in the last 7 days so that it's in descending order here based on the highest number of pins all the way down to the lowest number of repins. So this board, this top board here, faithmessenger.com, has received 1,500 repins in the last 7 days, and it has gotten about 1,500 new pins on the board. So just eyeballing, you can see that the weekly repin rate of this board is 1.0 or about 1.1. So well below its historical average, but still above 1, which is kind of what we're aiming for. So this board is an example of like a kind of a mediocre board that Lois can still post her content to because it's getting a decent engagement rate. The second board here is actually a good example of a board that's doing pretty well. Its historical repin rate is only 1. However, in the last 7 days, if you were to take 1,500 and divide it by 700, you can see that the current repin rate of this board is around 2.2, which is above 1 and also above the historical rate of this board. So this is a pretty good example of a board that will provide good engagement on your pins. As you can see, the engagement score is higher than just about everything else on this list, but it's also getting a fair number of repins each week. If you want to sort the board strictly by engagement scores, you can do that as well. But you're also going to get lumped in with some boards that don't have many pins, only 25 pins, not many followers. So I like to look for boards that have high engagement scores, but also a lot of repins. You want your pins to go out in front of as many eyeballs as possible. And so we want boards that are getting a lot of repins, but also have good engagement. So you can see we have 2 boards here right at the top that have decent engagement scores, and they're also getting a lot of repins this week. If you were to look at the repin rate for the board this week, we've already done this one, it was about 2.2. If you were to look at By His Grace, 1,200 divided by 800, you can see that the repin rate of this board is somewhere in between 1.3 and 1.5. So, 1.3 and 1.5. So these boards are doing pretty good this week, and they've also been doing decently historically. So these are 2 boards right here that Lois wants to be posting her best content to as frequently as the board allows. Each one of these boards typically has its own rules. Sometimes you can only post 1 time per day, or pin 1 time per day or 2 times per day. Sometimes they don't want duplicates. So you kind of have to be wary of what these boards want. But when you're looking for examples of boards that are doing well as a whole, these 2 right here are doing well for their viewers. I'm going to scroll down the list and look for examples that are doing, mediocre. Again, these boards right here are averaging around 1.0. In fact, this is about 0.75. So not anywhere near as good as this one that's got about 2.2 this week. So we're looking for boards that are averaging or above 1.0. And this top board here is just above 1, so that one's pretty good as well. So these first 3 boards are all doing okay. These 2 boards are right around 0.75, so they're not doing as well. Your pins are not getting as much engagement on those boards, but it might still worth be posting to them simply because you're going to get more eyes on your pins. As we move down this list, however, you're going to start to see boards that are not doing very good in terms of engagement. The repin rate of this board is closer to 0.5, so that's kind of starting to get into an area where you might want to consider maybe backing off. And then this board, if you look here, 448 repins in the last 7 days, but 1,200 new pins. So your repin rate is effectively 0.33 now, and your engagement metrics on those boards are not quite where you want them to be. So just something to consider when you're looking at boards that you want to pin to. I'm going to keep scrolling down this list. She's on about 50 or more boards, it looks like. I'm going to try to find an example of a board that she really wants to stay away from. For example, this Christian blogs and websites board, it's only gotten 151 repins this week, but it's gotten 830 new pins. I mean, the effective repin rate on that is probably right around 0.2. So we're swaying way away from that 1.0 that we're trying to stay around as best we can. I'll scroll down here and see if there's anything else worth mentioning. There's some down here. Again, we're looking at 0.3 for this one. Again, 0.3 again. So these boards down here at the bottom, one, they're not getting many repins, and then two, their engagement rates are usually pretty low. So these boards are only getting 10 repins a week. So from a pure numbers perspective, not many people are looking at these boards. So again, I like to work my way down from the top of the list, which boards are getting a ton of repins, and then are they actually engaging? I mean, this board might be 25, this repin rate, excuse me, I can't speak today. This board may be getting 25,000 repins a week, but if this number is 100,000, the engagement rate of that board is only 0.25, or the repin rate of that board is 0.25. So just kind of think about how boards are doing in the last week, and kind of just check in every couple weeks and see which boards are moving in the right direction and which boards are getting worse. Typically, as the number of contributors to a board increases, the worse these rates get, because it's hard to moderate a board with hundreds of contributors. I find that the best boards typically only have anywhere from 0 to 50 contributors. Once you get above 100 contributors, it typically turns into kind of a spam board because the rules get harder to moderate. So slower moving boards with lots of repins are kind of what you're looking for in terms of getting high engagement. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about just for a couple minutes, trying to stress that engagement matters more than followers now to some extent. Pinterest wants to find highly engaging pins, and then they want to put them on the smart feed in front of readers. So just because a board has 79,000 followers doesn't necessarily mean it's good. I'll try to find you an example of one that has a lot of followers but is not doing so well. This board right here has 2,000 followers, but it's only gotten 10 repins over the last week. So just something to think about in terms of quality over quantity. Anyhow, if you guys have any questions from the video or just any questions about group boards in general, feel free to reach us in the group and just tag one of me or Jeff, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. Have a good one.